The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's May the 13th, 2025. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined today by Stephen Wagner and our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And guys, I thought I would just start. We're starting to see a lot of prognosticating going on out there. It's the middle of May. You know, football season is still more than 3 months away, but people are starting to get the fever. You know, they're itching for some college football and the drama that the fall always brings to our country with the college game, and starting to make predictions on what they think is going to happen. And the one pattern that I've been noticing, and I'm going to blame it on Matt Shodell, because, I mean, he sets the tone for the perception of Miami football with all the articles he does every day. All the national pundits are on CaneSport.com. They read what he says every day. His negativity sort of floweth over all across the land. And I think people are selling the Miami Hurricanes a little short. And you can call me, you know, an orange and green flag waver or whatever you want. But I'm feeling a little bullish about this team now that we've gone through the transfer portal and picked up some roster reinforcements and narrowed the scope of weaknesses that might have existed coming out of recruiting. And I think that based on that and what I'm hearing from a positive standpoint on what Carson Beck is doing out there on a daily basis, that I'm feeling kind of good about where Miami's at going into the season. And I do think that some of these national pundits are selling the Canes short. And we bring up one of them today. On three's Ari Wasserman, a supremely talented college football expert and writer. And he has Miami right now at number 20 in his post-spring top 25. And his cohort in crime at On Three, Andy Staples, has pretty much said the same in some of his recent pieces and podcasts. And then you look around the country, and a lot of these other entities are striking a similar tone. So Miami is a top 15 to 20 team. Matt Shodell, you should feel right at home probably talking about that, but your thoughts?
I mean, I'll pretend I listened to what you were saying. All I know is that we're talking about prognostications. You mentioned Carson Beck. He was always going to be 100% entering fall camp. That was never a question. The question is, will he be the 2023 Carson Beck or the one who led the SEC in interceptions last year, Carson Beck? The thing that gives me pause, and I was feeling really good about this team. Post-spring, during the spring, I've always been consistent. I'm predicting the playoffs for this year. I'm not going to vary from that because I predicted it. Why would I change my mind? What gives me pause, and fans think this is a great thing, but what worries me is that Mario has added by far the most transfer portal pickups of his entire career, 19. 8 of them after he saw this team in the spring. Now, he knows the team better than I do. He knows the team almost as well as Gary does. So why is he panicking and adding 7 starters in the second portal window? What is that saying to us about how he feels about his team? And these aren't even like free agents. These are like guys who had 2 ACL injuries that they're hoping can be back to form. Guys that never had more than 450 receiving yards in 4 years in college, you know, that are now projected to start in the slot and outside receiver. Guys that are going to play nickel who had a terrible year last year. Okay, so now they're going to be the starting nickel. What does that tell us? Like that's what concerns me. I really wasn't that worried until I see the guys they're bringing in that I know Mario's going to start, right? Because, you know, as we looked at this last year, Marley Cook got more reps than Justin Scott. Jalen Alderman got more reps than Raul Aguirre. Jalen Alderman got more reps than Bobby Pruitt. Sam Brown ate up reps late in the year that could have gone to a then healthy JoJo Trader. He was hurt early in the year. You know, I mean, this is just a recurring pattern, right? Miami's now taken, since Mario took over, 15.3 transfers per year. Okay, over 15 transfers per year since he arrived. Clemson averages 1.3 in the same span. Georgia 6.5, Ohio State 7.3, Michigan 9.0, Alabama 9.3. Yes, I went in my, whatever the hell you call it, basement and did some
He's
research.
loading up on us, Stephen. He's
Okay. These
well
are
prepared for the show
facts.
this morning.
2 years ago, Marley Cook had, what was it? 2023. I did some more data points here, but I got to find them. There was more examples. Okay, here we go. Chris Johnson, 23 reps. AJ Allen, 169. Henry Parrish, 283. Both those guys were transfers. Cam McCormick comes in as a transfer. Riley Williams, who's now gone, but Cam McCormick has 200 more reps than Riley Williams, right? Colby Young, who was fine, and then transferred back out. He was a JUCO arrival, so I consider him a transfer. Ate into Isaiah Horton's reps as a freshman, right? He had 300 more reps than Isaiah. KJ Cloyd, 393 reps. Then true freshman Raul Aguirre, 38. Thomas Gore, 167 reps. Jacob Lichtenstein, 150 reps. Ahmad Moten, 146. So you see this consistent pattern of Mario taking guys that are here for a year that are then gone over the guys that are going to be here multiple years that maybe could use valuable reps for a totally wasted season in 2023. This is what this is what concerns me. And now you see this year, he's still not understanding the portal needs to be free agents and trust the guys you recruited and trust the guys you developed. He's not trusting those guys. What does that tell me? I think I know Mario knows what he's doing. So what it tells me is the guys aren't good. The guys he recruited that were 4 stars and 5 stars, the guys he spent the last 3 years developing, they're not good enough because he's taken 19 transfers, 10 to 12 of whom will be starting this year. And they're not free agents. Carson Beck's a free agent. James Brockermeyer is a borderline free agent only because he was at TCU. If he did that somewhere else, he'd be a clear free agent. And I would call Xavier Lucas a free agent, even though technically he's not, because a free agent is someone who performed at a very high level at a high-level program. He was a backup last year, but I'm calling him a free agent because he's clearly a future star just from watching him this spring. So 3 out of the 19 to me are free agents. Maybe the Rutgers guy the Rutgers linebacker will be a free agent, but that's if he's back off 2 knee surgeries. They say he's healthy, but that doesn't mean he's explosive. It just means his knee is intact. It means when they did the MRI, it showed that it was attached. Okay, it doesn't mean he's going to be as explosive as he was 2 years ago. We don't know. He hasn't played it in a football game or practice since his second torn ACL. This is what we're dealing with. So again, playoffs. I'm sticking with the playoffs. Those are my caveats.
All right. Well, if you're sticking with the playoffs, then you're agreeing with me that some of these pundits around the country are sleeping on the Canes a little bit, and it's going to be because of the work that Mario and the staff did in spring portal.
Okay. One quick thing. You're wrong, because if you're referring to the most recent on 3 poll, which had Miami 20th, right, which is out of the playoffs. Well, Miami's actually the second in the ACC in that poll. Clemson's first, Miami's second. So if you take 2 ACC teams in the playoffs, they're still a playoff team. They're just not ranked real high. They're not a real good team. Like, they're 20th. And I don't disagree with that.
They won't be a playoff team at number 20.
Of course they can be. If they're second best in the ACC, if they win the ACC against Clemson, which was undefeated, they're automatically.
The team in the ACC is number 20. There's going to be one team in the playoff in the ACC.
If they're second in the ACC, they're in the ACC title game. If they win the ACC title game, they're automatically in the playoffs.
If they
lose the ACC title game, they still might be in the playoffs depending on how much sway the ACC has. Like,
if they win the ACC title game, they'll probably be ranked higher than 20. If they're the number 20 team in the country after the ACC title game, I feel pretty confident that they're not going to be in any playoffs.
Well, is 20th,
and if they're the second best in the ACC, there would be one team in the playoff.
Is 20th a regular season, end of regular season ranking, or a final season ranking? I'm assuming it's a final season ranking, so they can make the playoffs as the 12th team.
Yeah.
Lose in the playoffs in the first round. Get crushed.
Come on, they're not thinking
there you go.
Jesus, come on, Matt. Nobody's processing it that deep. All right, Stephen, let's bring some sanity to this conversation. Okay, you talk about the number of transfer portal pickups. No question, they hit the portal way more than anybody expected them to between the 2 cycles and certainly in the spring. 8 pickups, I believe it ended up being. We thought it would be closer to 4. You say that is a statement by Mario that he doesn't think his team was good enough coming out of spring practice. I'll applaud Mario for that. You know why? Because I don't think his team was good enough coming out of spring practice either. I listen. The worst thing the coaches can do is put their head in the sand and not be able to step back and do an honest assessment of their team. Okay. And, it's not easy, especially for somebody that values recruiting and puts the time and effort into recruiting that Mario Cristobal does. I mean, recruiting is this guy's life. Okay. 365 days a year, 6 a.m. till 11 at night. He's recruiting, and it is the world to him. Okay, and he handpicked a lot of these guys now. Now, what I'll argue, and I'm going to get a few people mad at me when I say this, is through the first 3 years of Mario, I'm not convinced that the right players have always been being brought to him to recruit. I think if there's been a deficiency in the program, it's been in the evaluation of players and the decisions that have been made on who to recruit. And that is supported by exactly what you're talking about, Matt, that if here we are in year 3 and all these guys that have been recruited are not yet ready to be frontline players, and they are not, I'm supporting that notion. They're not. And I'm applauding the coaches for being able to reconcile that and say, despite all the efforts that we have put into recruiting, what we have here is not good enough to beat Clemson, win the ACC, make the playoff, and in year 4 of Mario, contend for the national championship game. And that is the goal, unquestionably. And so I think it's a good thing that they've made that decision. But you're not wrong that they made it. Steven, what do you say?
I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily applauding Mario for coming in and, having the sense to go ahead and add these guys in the spring portal window, because you are right. That does absolutely mean that he was looking at his team and he was saying, what we have is not good enough right now. I don't think that that's something that, deserves, a great round of applause or anything. I think that's, that's more of just, what the job basically requires. I view that as a basic requirement of the job. I think that it kind of says that, Miami's evaluation and their development maybe hasn't been where it needs to be, because recruiting is basically like a two-faced coin. I've said this on the board a billion times. I know I've said it before. It's recruiting, and then it's also player development, because one without the other will get you a team that's going to end up at 8-5. If you want all recruiting and horrible player development, look at a school like Texas A&M, who signed, the most incredible class that anyone had ever seen. We all thought, man, Texas A&M just cracked recruiting. They signed like 7 or 8 5-stars and then like 24 stars or whatever that number was. Texas A&M never had a 10-win season. They went 5-7 the next year, and then I think they went like 8-5 and 8-5 or something like that, and they fired their coach. And then you look at a school like, Iowa, who, let's face it, Iowa's never gone after the players that a school like Texas or a school like Notre Dame or Ohio State or Miami or Alabama or Georgia, or name one of these, traditional powers. They've never gone after the players that those programs have gone after, but their player development has always been awesome. And you know what Iowa is? They're 8-5. So one without the other is going to get you to mediocrity. Right now, if Miami doesn't do something about the player development, they're going to be staring down either the barrel of mediocrity or eternally just having to overpay in the transfer portal for free agents, because they're completely desperate, because they're not able to develop those guys in-house, which means that they're going to have to go spend new money on new NIL deals and get these short one-year rental guys who they hope can come in and be a serious boost to the team. Now, obviously you hope that you eventually get to the point where you view one of these transfer portal guys as kind of, the crown jewel or the finishing touch. But until we get to that point, I still think that Miami's player development is kind of in question under Cristobal. They did have a first-round draft pick this year in Cam Ward, but he was a rental. They got him on a one-year deal, and he thrived at Miami. Miami did everything that, Miami provided him everything that he was promised. He's definitely not the number 1 overall pick in the draft without Miami, but still, this was a guy that Miami was only able to get 1 year of. Their player development, I think, is still in question.
All right. It's fair, but let's talk about why that might be the case. I look at the coaching staff turnover of the first 3 years of Mario. How do you develop players when you're constantly changing coaches? And, there's no question that he made some mistakes in some of the assistant coaches that he hired, and or the ones he hired did not come through for him. Okay. It's easy we can call them mistakes after the fact, no problem. But the truth of the matter is, when he hired them, he didn't see them as mistakes, and they didn't come through the way that he hoped they would. And either for whatever the reason is, I'm sure the reasons are different on every front. Smart and Charlie Strong, they were done. Like they really didn't have the passionate interest in coaching anymore and being here, most likely. Josh Gaddis was a complete disaster. I mean, I think Mario got sold a bill of goods from some people on Josh Gaddis. It turned out to be a colossal mistake. So they all have their individual situations and reasons. But when you have the kind of turnover on the coaching staff that they've had, I think that player development is going to suffer because the players are being taught something new every year. Okay. Now the staff is a little bit more stable. You brought in a couple new coaches on the defensive side, which was absolutely necessary. And yes, those guys on defense are having to go through that same adjustment. But let me say this: the turnover didn't change this year. I think the quality of the coaches did. I'm a big believer on what I've seen from the coaches on the defensive side of the ball. The coaching that I have seen taking place on that side of the ball is significantly upgraded from what took place in the first couple of years of Mario. So, if your priority is not to have to go to the transfer portal ever, and yes, if taking 18 guys in the portal is too many, then you better start developing the guys that you're recruiting at a higher level so that you don't need to go to the portal. I mean, I don't think they go to the portal because they're enamored by the portal. I think they go to the portal because, like we talked about earlier, they want to make the team better. And you would be stupid, an absolute fool, to sit here and say, my team is good enough, I'm not going to the portal, and I'm not going to use that vehicle to improve my roster, when your team isn't good enough. And so that's why I said earlier that I applaud Mario and the team for taking this route.
So of the 19 transfers, they're all free agents to you, Gary? Because that's the whole point, right? If you're going to take a portal guy, he should be a lot better than what you already have. So I'm assuming you think most of these guys are free agents.
No. I think some
great argument. Then I love your argument. It makes a lot of sense.
Some are going to be depth fillers, but I think that's still important. It's like people were so ready to just throw Emory Williams out of the program and into the portal. No, Emory Williams is a valuable piece of a successful team. There is no guarantee that you won't need Emory Williams to win games this year.
You want to know what's scary, Gary? This is what, and Steven, since you appear to still be awake, I can't tell. This is what's scary. If Cam Ward had stayed true to his word and gone to the NFL, Miami coaches were convinced that Reese Poffenbarger was the answer. And if he wasn't, that Emory Williams was. And that guy who believed that is still here. That's the coach who's still here, Shannon Dawson. So, I don't, I know you're saying all these coaches are amazing. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. I keep trying to tell you guys, this is the year where Shannon Dawson proves it, right? Because the receivers are all gone. Brand new quarterback who had a little bit of a rough year last year. Georgia fans were not upset to see Carson Beck leave, right? He had the number one quarterback in the country, a talent that we haven't seen at Miami ever at quarterback, I would say, honestly, even with the guys we've had, because he was the number one draft pick overall. So dating to Vinny Testaverde, right? And was it Cam Ward's offense that was so great, or was it Shannon Dawson's? Because 2 years ago, Shannon Dawson's offense sucked. So this is the year for Shannon Dawson. This is the year for Mario Cristobal, right? We're going to find out. And that's why, Gary mentions, these everyone loves these early polls and these early, right? They're not, everyone knows they're nonsense. Like it's fun to say, oh, we're getting respect or we're getting disrespected. That's all these polls do. That's all these polls do. They tell you if you're being respected or disrespected. And Miami has not earned any respect. If Miami's in the top 10 in any poll, that writer's crazy. What has Miami shown you in 22 years or done this year since the end of last year to get better, to show they're a championship level team, a top 10 team? Like nothing. I believe it because I predicted it 2 years ago that they were going to be in the playoffs in 2025. So I'm going to stick with that. But if I'm re-predicting right now, I'm probably going with 9 wins, only because I don't love what this portal addition means for the program and what Mario Cristobal must have seen in spring practice that I missed because we only watched an hour of practice.
So let me get this straight, Mr. Flip Flopper. This is awesome.
I'm not flip flopping. I'm going with playoffs and 9 wins.
This is awesome, man.
I'm doing both.
This is worthy of my Matt Shodell shades. Okay, this one here, Matt Shodell, who's been saying forever that I predict that this team is going to make the playoff.
If my alter ego
is now downgrading his prediction.
If my alter ego, Cam,
picked up 8 new players in the transfer portal.
Can I speak?
Oh my God!
If my alter ego
lighting up on this one.
If my alter ego Tam Lotesh, which is my name in reverse, was making a new prediction, it would be 9 wins. But I'm sticking as Matt Shodell with playoffs because it's what I do. I make a prediction, I stick with it. I'm not wishy-washy like Gary Ferman wants to pretend. I'm sticking with playoffs. Tam Lotesh says 9 wins. Matt Shodell says playoffs.
You actually took the time to figure out what your name would be backwards. I've never once thought what my name would be backwards.
Netpats loser. That's how it's pronounced.
All right. So before I touch on somebody who has a positive opinion about the Canes, I just want to touch on a couple other things that you mentioned, Mr. Shodell. The wide receivers, yes, they did take a couple receivers in the spring portal after observing what they had in spring practice. What they had in spring practice was very, very, very good. Okay. The freshmen that came into the program in traditional recruiting are all excellent players that are going to make huge contributions to this program. But again, applause to the coaches because they recognize they are true freshmen. And when the game planning starts week to week and they have to adjust what they're doing week to week and they have a lot to learn week to week, those kids are going to start swimming a little bit. And it's going to be hard to count on them for 50, 60, 70 plays a game. And it's going to help to have guys in the program who have done it before on a college football field. So, yes, I applaud the receivers that they picked up.
Dude, when they took Sam Brown last year, you're like, this guy's going to be the best receiver in the room. You
Sam
said
Brown
that.
wasn't used.
And I said he's going to be a waste of time. And who was right? And now I'm sitting here telling you these freshman receivers will be better than these guys they just added in the portal. And we'll come back a year from now, and I'll tell you again that you were wrong. I mean, I'm happy to do it every year, Gary, but this is the same damn thing every time. You say every portal guy they got is the best or is going to help. It's not true. It's been proven to not be true that the portal guys they get do not help. Okay? The majority of the portal guys they have added on this team have not helped. And they're supposed to be guys who are college ready, have done it and shown it. Very easy to evaluate guys who are already in college versus high school guys, and they failed. Like, that's just the truth, which is why I'm saying do what Mario does best. Recruit, develop, let those guys play. It's not like that hard an equation.
I'm not saying that, Josh Moore, for example, that Malachi Toney, for example, are not better than Keelan Marion and Tony Johnson.
They are better. They are better athletes than those two guys. It's not the experience.
Better players. No argument from me on that, although I do think Marion can help as a kick returner a lot.
Oh, yeah. Punt return, kick return, it's great having those guys.
Yeah, he's going to help a lot there, and I think he'll make a contribution at receiver. I'm not saying that they're better than what these guys are going to be, but do you really feel that when you go play Notre Dame on August 31st that you're going to be able to put Malachi Toney out there on the field for 60 plays? There's no way. No chance that you're going to be able to do that.
Did you watch Malachi Toney in the spring? Did you watch him like taunting his senior teammates when he made catches againge them? That's the dude. That's this guy.
He's absolutely going to be a dude.
Some of these guys,
that in the month of September, when they got to beat Notre Dame and beat the Gators, that these kids are going to be ready to go out there for 60 snaps. That's where the depth that they're getting with these older guys should pay dividends. And as far as it goes for Sam Brown was underused last year because it was the Restrepo show. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? Sam Brown could have been a much bigger contributor to that team than he ended up being. It is what it is. We'll see if he makes it in the NFL. I don't know that he will or won't, but he absolutely could have made a bigger contribution last year. And as far as the secondary is concerned, listen, they didn't hit on every pickup they made in the early portal. Okay, there were a couple of those guys. One that was sent out of the program already. I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember his name.
Emmanuel Carnley.
Right. He was already sent out of the program.
And
Charles
who said when they took him that they shouldn't have taken him?
You absolutely did. You absolutely did.
How do I know these things?
Totally give you credit for that. Yes.
Am I like some sort of weird college football savant who's like is an idiot but somehow knows these things and the coaches don't? I don't understand.
But bringing in Keontae Scott and Jacoby Thomas, to replace that is not a bad move. And maybe they'll be better, maybe they won't, but they have a chance to be, especially Scott. I mean, Scott was a very good player at Auburn at one point. So we'll see how that evolves. But the bottom line is the goal is to make this the best team it could possibly be by August 31st. And I applaud Mario and the coaches for not having their heads in the sand and being willing to accept the fact that they may have made some mistakes along the way that they need to try to shore up. And
just to be clear, Gary Ferman is saying the team's not that good coming out of spring, and they added a bunch of average guys, and now they're great. Just want to make sure I can clarify for everybody.
I think they're better. They have more depth, and I think they picked up a couple pieces that will help them. I mean, they've got guys, you could say Malachi Toney, you're going to return kickoffs, you're going to return punts, you're going to start in the slot and play 60 snaps a game. You could say, hey, you're going to do all that as a true freshman, but is that reality? Like, do you really want to be doing that on a team that's trying to compete for championships? No, absolutely not. And now at least you could put a guy back there to return kicks that's done it before on a college football field, and you could bring Malachi Toney along. It doesn't mean you're going to go the whole year and not let him return a punt. I don't see that happening. But you don't have to sit there and try to beat Notre Dame on opening night with freshmen that have never stepped foot on a college football field. And as far as the linebacker,
by the way, can I tell you something?
Wait, I'm not done. And as far as the linebacker, no, I am not done.
God forbid I interrupt you once. God forbid.
As far as the linebacker with the 2 ACL surgeries, you're talking about, if you talk to people at Rutgers, they will tell you that kid was probably the best player on their football team, healthy, and that it's an absolute good risk for Miami to take to try to see if he can be 100% by the fall and be a contributor to the defense. All right, let me move on. One guy that is bullish on Miami, or much more bullish, is J.D. Piquel. He's another On3 analyst, personality. He thinks that the Hurricanes are set to push for the college football playoff, just like Matt Shodell used to think before he flip-flopped to the other side.
That was Shodell, whatever his name is, not me.
And we've got that video and feature with J.D. Piquel on the website this morning. So make sure you check that out. And I'll be inviting J.D. Piquel to come on this show at some point here, also in the near future, to talk a little bit about his bullishness about Miami. All right. Moving on to the next thing I want to talk about is we're starting to break down candidates for players who are ready to shine in 2025. Matt Shodell, that's your baby. You already wrote about number 5, Ryan Rodriguez. You wrote about number 4, Malachi Toney. Today, we bring number 3, Dylan Day, into the equation. Talk about those 3 and why you isolated them.
Well, first, of course, I'm going to go back to try and say what I did before. So Notre Dame is already expected to be a 7.5-point favorite, somewhere in that range for the opener, which Gary says, don't play the young guys. We'll never have a chance, okay? Here's the thing about that. Some guys, he's right. Some guys are not ready for the big stage in game one. And you know who is and who isn't. You can tell as coaches. I've coached, even high school players, I've coached them. You can tell if they're freaking out, if they're, ready for the moment, whatever it is. The nice thing about playing Notre Dame in the opener is Notre Dame will have no real tape other than high school footage of guys like Malachi Toney and Josh Moore, whereas they will have plenty of tape of Keelan Marion and Tony Johnson, all these other portal guys. If you want to shock Notre Dame, if you think you are going to lose to Notre Dame and you are the underdog, okay, these are the guys that have the skill set that Notre Dame DBs have not studied on film. They don't know the strengths of Malachi Toney running a route. They don't know how certain things are going to work, right? They can see that the offense is going to be Shannon Dawson's offense. They can study, Carson Beck all they want and all these other returning receivers or guys they brought in. What they can't study is high school guys. And if those high school guys are amazing players, then there you go. there's your mismatches all game long. There's your 3 touchdowns, and you win by 2 touchdowns, and we can all go off and say, and have a beer or whatever. And when that happens in the opener, Gary can apologize to me. Now, as for Dylan Day, I actually think, Zachariah Poyser, everyone's like, oh my gosh, this spring he looks so great. Just to recap, right? He started as a redshirt freshman at Jacksonville State and had a really good year. And now he's a redshirt sophomore. So let's not go crazy here, right? Mish Powell came in with a much better resume than this guy, okay? Now, this guy looks the part, right? Long, lean, looks pretty fast, looks pretty explosive. Looked really good in the spring. But for some reason, 2 years ago, he wasn't recruited by major programs, okay? For some reason, 2 years ago, he wasn't good enough to play at Jacksonville State. He redshirted. And now he's had one good year. So to anoint him this great safety and the answer, I don't know. And now there's nothing after him. The Tennessee transfer, he was a backup, right? He might be good, but he hasn't shown it. He's not a free agent, not even close. Which is why Dylan Day probably is the best athletic safety on the roster. I think Dylan Day will start. I think he'll be their best safety. This is why I keep saying, let Mario recruit, let Mario develop. Because a lot of these guys you bring in from other programs, like 2 years ago, Zachariah Poyser was a nobody from Nowheresville going to a Jacksonville State program that's nowhere near Miami's level, right? Dylan Day was a highly recruited athlete, 3-4-star kid, depending who you looked at.
Handpicked by Lance Guidry.
Right, that's not a positive. But he's fast, he's mobile, and if you look at that safeties room, he stands out. You're like, who's that guy? Okay? I think he's going to be great. Now, safety is different than receiver, right? Safety, you're not going to get a guy to play as a true freshman in a complicated system, which Lance Guidry's system was very complicated for safeties. And guess what? This one's not that less complicated for a safety, okay? It's still run through linebackers and safeties have huge responsibilities. But I think Dylan Day will get it to the point where he will be really good. As long as he's playing fast, he's going to be the best safety in the room. That's my opinion. And I'm sticking with that and with the playoffs, okay? Matt Shodell says playoffs, Ferman, period. I'm sticking with it. I've predicted it for 2 years. I'm not changing it.
Now you just came back. I don't know if they make the playoff with 9 wins that you said they're going to have.
That was my alter ego. You're not paying attention.
It's not any alter ego. That's your
no, really. I mean, honestly, it's not. I was doing it tongue in cheek because in response to what Mario's been doing. I mean, taking 19 transfers and 8 in the second portal window, that's a panic number. That's why I was tongue in cheek saying my alter ego would predict 9 wins. Now, I don't understand it. I don't understand why you're bringing in 5 new starters after what you saw in the spring. I thought they looked okay. That's why I'm saying tongue in cheek, Tam Lodes, whatever the hell my name is backwards. He would predict 9 wins because what is going on? Why did Mario have to do this and spend all this money?
A healthy Kamal Bonner is better than where Popo Aguirre is. Okay.
Well, see, that's okay. Great question. Is that a fact or is that your opinion? Because Kamal Bonner was going to be a backup at NC State this year. So you're saying a guy who's going to be a backup at NC State is the best linebacker starter at Miami. That's not a good thing.
I'm just telling you, Charmar Brown.
He left because he was going to be a backup. You know that, right? He was going to be a backup for the Wolfpack, so he left. Now all of a sudden he's better than Raul Aguirre, who's been handpicked by Miami and trained for 3 years at Miami. That says something, Gary.
Charmar Brown as a number 3 running back is going to be better than, say, Chris Wheatley Humphrey or Gerard Pringle probably would have been this year. And if Pringle ends up better than him, all the power to him. That's great.
Okay, you're
not a lot to lose.
You're not understanding. Okay, here's Charmar Brown and Gerard Pringle are two. They're not going to be used the same way. Charmar Brown is there to hurt the opponent, to bang the opponent into submission. Gerard Pringle's a small receiving back, sort of in that Chris Johnson mode.
They didn't have, other than Mark Fletcher, who has a propensity to get
here's
hurt.
the thing. Here's the thing. If Charmar Brown is your new goal line back and third down back, is he better than Mark Fletcher in that role? I don't know. That's what they're going to use him as, right? He's slower than Mark Fletcher.
He may not be, but what if Mark Fletcher
slower than Mark Fletcher? He played at a totally different level. The gaps at a lower level are a lot different. It's a lot easier to run over linebackers at a lower level, like Charmar Brown did. I'm not saying the guy's not amazing. I'm sure he's amazing. But I don't know, as we say here today, if the season opener is today and it's 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, Miami down by 6 points, Are you giving the ball to Charmar Brown or to Mark Fletcher? I'm giving it to freaking Mark Fletcher. So I don't want Charmar Brown eating into Mark Fletcher's power back reps. Like if you want to give him a couple of series to rest Mark Fletcher, fine. But I'm not pointing to Charmar Brown as the third back as this amazing addition in the portal. I don't know why people are.
My point is that the team is not worse because Charmar Brown is on the team. It's not
worse for anybody. You just don't have to play him. I mean, what does that even mean? Of course, they're not worse. If they play a bad player in the portal window, then they're worse. But if they recognize the guy's not good and just sit him on the bench, of course you're not going to be worse.
It's about making the complete roster better. Plus, Charmar also has a couple years of eligibility left, so that's a good thing as well.
If he's all right, listen, I don't know his straight ahead speed. I got to see him run because on tape it's hard to tell. These teams they played weren't real good. It looks like he just busts over guys. Maybe he'll be like that Arizona State guy who's on the Giants now. Maybe he'll be that, or maybe he'll just be a really like smaller version of Refrigerator Perry. Like, I don't know. So we'll find out.
All right. We've also begun our top 50 countdown of players on the team, an interesting exercise that we always undertake every year. And you're going to see this over the next 50 days. And you're going to probably come to the same conclusion that we've come to, which is there's not a ton of proven impact talent still on this roster, but it's a deep roster. Like, for example, we've got Dalen Upshaw at number 50. He's a freshman receiver that did great this spring. Okay. So people ask me all the time, is the team better than what it was under Manny Diaz? And even though you're not necessarily seeing it in terms of championships and such, and I say it absolutely is, because the roster from 1 to 50 is better than what it was. It's just not necessarily more top heavy. Manny had some good players too, Jalen Phillips, Greg Rousseau, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like the program never had a great player. But the top 50 that they have right now that they will go to battle with here in 2025 is unquestionably better than anything that we saw anytime really in the last, probably 15, 20 years, quite honestly, that Miami has been struggling its way through college football seasons. So we start breaking down the top 50. You'll find that on the website today. And I also wanted to talk about, before we go here this morning, about Steven's story this morning that's on the website about the Sunshine State Showdown, which recruits the Miami Hurricanes are battling for against Florida and Florida State. Steven, Miami is a national recruiting team. They will go anywhere in the United States searching for talent. But ultimately, the bulk of the recruiting class is going to come from the state of Florida, which means they are going to go head-to-head with Florida and Florida State. Give us a quick synopsis of that and where that stands today, and as it pertains to your story that's on the website today.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if I'd necessarily say, it's a given that the majority of recruits will come from the state of Florida. I'd say it'll probably end up being somewhere between 40 and 60%. By the time that we're done at the end of the day, because I think that, we've seen those numbers basically since Mario got here as far as the percentage of in-state players that they've ultimately ended up getting. But as far as who Miami's battling Florida and Florida State for, Miami's battling a lot more players for Florida than they're battling Florida State for. And I think right now that's honestly because Florida State, their reputation took such a significant hit last year that on the recruiting trail, recruits kind of feel like they have to, buy that belief in Mike Norvell back. Because I think a lot of recruits don't know if they're going to go play for, the 13-0 ACC champion Mike Norvell, or are they going to play for 2-10 Mike Norvell that beats Cal and who was it, like Charleston Southern or something like that. But Florida absolutely does have some very real tangible momentum that they really were able to get on the recruiting trail at the end of that they were really able to get on the recruiting trail at the end of last year whenever they started, winning games, whenever they beat Ole Miss and they beat LSU and then they beat Florida State and then they won their bowl game. There's a lot of dudes that Miami and Florida are really going to end up fighting for. Just kind of going off the top of my head, I think Brett Collegier is going to be one. He's also considering Florida, although we've heard things about SEC schools like Georgia and Tennessee too. Devin Jackson is a 4-star safety who decommitted from Florida fairly recently, who we thought Miami was in a really, really great position for earlier in the spring. Now he's kind of shopping his options around a little bit. So I don't know if I'd necessarily say that, it's going to be a majority of in-state recruits that Miami's actually going to end up with. I think it'll probably be somewhere in the range of 40 to 60%, because that's pretty much what Mario has had since he got here. All of his recruiting classes have been, 40 to 60% in-state players. And then, they'll get guys from Georgia. They'll get, a couple of guys from Alabama, or maybe a kid from, I don't know, one of the Carolinas or something like that. But as far as, the players Miami's really battling Florida and Florida State for, we're not really necessarily seeing Miami battle as many guys with Florida State as we are with Florida. Even though FSU is absolutely shooting their shot, I think there's a lot more battles that will probably be Miami, Florida than, necessarily Florida State being that real top contender for a bunch of these kids. Wagner Cleveland, I definitely think is going to be a big one. He's a 4-star defensive tackle. I've said before, this class top to bottom is really not great as far as the defensive tackle class goes, but Wagner Cleveland is one of those guys Miami absolutely loves. They are recruiting the crap out of. Jordan Campbell, the Miami linebacker commit, Florida's still working on him. Florida, Auburn, and Nebraska, they're shooting their shot with him. Hezzy Kent, the 4-star tight end tight end / offensive lineman from the Georgia area. Right now, I really do think that it's going to come down to either Miami or Florida for him. Miami's recruiting the crap out of him. Florida has a bunch of really strong ties to him. Samorian Wingo, the 4-star receiver from St. Augustine, that's another kid Miami's battling Florida for. And I really do see Miami and Florida as kind of, 1 and 2 right there. I really do think those are the top 2 schools. Jason Lopez, we're starting to, the local 4-star slot from Chaminade, we're starting to see both Florida and Florida State show a little bit of interest in him. So we're keeping pretty close tabs on him too. Then obviously, the guy who, is actually, his photos on the cover of the story, Chauncey Kennan, Florida and Florida State both want him really bad. Georgia and LSU are also in this picture. I think that most likely what's going to happen is he's going to end up staying in state at one of the 3 schools. I do think that each of these 3 schools does have a pretty good argument for him. Miami, obviously, they can offer location. He really likes Mario Cristobal as a head coach. They can offer, obviously, they're as competitive as anyone from an NIL standpoint. He has a sister who runs track at Florida State, so there's also a tie there, obviously. And he's also in Tampa, which historically has been, the Florida Gators' recruiting backyard. So I think any of those 3 schools has a really great chance with him. Like I said, Georgia and LSU also in that mix, but I really do think it'll be Miami, Florida, or Florida State. Then going out of state, just real quick. Jay Lamar, the 4-star running back from Georgia. Right now he has OV set up with Miami and Florida State. Right now, I think it's most likely he probably ends up at Georgia. I do not know that for a fact. That's just kind of my reading on the situation right now and where things sit now that we're heading into official visits. But Florida State has shown some pretty strong interest in him. They're going to be able to get him down for an OV2.
All right, there it is. Well, that's going to conclude it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Make sure you check out all those stories on our website. And if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, you've had the information scrolling at the bottom of our screen the entire show. Your subscriptions mean everything to us and make everything that we do possible for you guys. So if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport, please head on over. You can test drive the site for $1 and become a part of our great fan community. You will not be sorry. So for Stephen Wagner and Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time, everybody.